I really remember thinking, I hope we lose consciousness before the flames.
Look how quick it's moving.
I really thought that I was going to die.
It became the strongest tropical cyclone ever reliably observed on Earth. It was like being inside a washing machine.
Watch out, John!
World's wildest weather. Catastrophic and weird weather events from around the globe, filmed on camera by those caught up in the chaos.
We've got major damage here in Moore, Oklahoma.
Expert meteorologists explain the causes behind the events and show us why our weather has become so challenging and life-threatening. Australia has huge and incredible bushfires. Some are necessary, as the fauna relies on them as a way of reproducing, but they can pose a massive threat to humans and livestock.
Emergency warning for a bushfire burning under catastrophic conditions.
So I realise now that we were in danger, but it didn't feel like that at that moment in time.
I reckon the fire front's probably about 5 kilometres at a guess at the moment, right at the head of the fire here.
We were travelling at 50 or 60 miles an hour, and it was keeping up with us, it was chasing us.
For the Pinery Bushfire, all the elements were there, lined up one after another, and what it equated to was a catastrophic event. First of all, there was the heat in October 2015. Temperatures across South Australia were 5 degrees above average. And then what followed was the wettest November since 1971. Rainfall records were broken again, which prompted plant and vegetation growth. So this increased the fuel load over a huge region.
In November 2015, Peter Rosenfeld and Vera were on a family holiday to Australia, and oblivious to the danger that lay ahead.
It was a 4-week adventure, and the adventure would take us from Darwin to Adelaide on a 3,000-mile road trip.
The Grass Fire Danger Index is pretty much a measure of how much danger there is in a region of fire. Now, on the day of the fires, it was predicted to be around 148. Anything higher than 150 is deemed catastrophic, but on the day of the fires, it actually exceeded 200.
This meant that the fire was going to be catastrophic, uncontrollable, unpredictable, fast-moving, and a danger to life.
We just left family in Whyalla, and they told us that we should take this nice back road because we'd already seen the main road.
Little did they know what dangers lay ahead for them.
The old dust devil's happening. It's hard to tell whether they're actually fire in the distance there.
So this part of South Australia, they'd been suffering from drought for around 12 years, and it was a very intense drought. Let me give you some numbers. The amount of rainfall they'd lost within those 12 years equated to 1 year's worth of rain. Textbook conditions for a bushfire.
The temperatures in the area were skyrocketing, with vast parts of the state recording daily maximum temperatures of 12 degrees Celsius above average, around 40 degrees Celsius. A tinderbox of dry bushland was waiting for ignition.
Homes are getting hopefully close to getting threatened. That's the township of Pinery there.
When we looked south in the direction that we were heading, we saw a cloud formation, and it was quite spectacular.
So when we were driving towards this weather front, this cloud, it seemed to be just a cloud in the distance, but it stayed there, and it became bigger and bigger as we approached.
Peter and Vera were innocently driving towards one of the worst bushfires South Australia had ever seen.
About an hour into that journey, we realised that this cloud hadn't really got any bigger. It was just covering the whole horizon as it was an hour before. And we started to feel that this was something big. It was something exciting.
A bushfire is when you get a fire that happens in natural environments. It could be naturally caused, or it could be a human influence that leads to that wildfire, and it's generally going to burn in wild conditions. But as we know, whenever it's burning in wild conditions, typically you're also going to interact with human developments, houses, buildings, anything that's in the way, roads. So as that bushfire is spreading, usually by wind-driven elements or a boundary that's moving through the area, a cold front, a dry line, anything that can move air through, that will drive the fire and change the way that it is moving, which is why bushfires can be so dangerous.
At the moment, still pretty windy conditions over the mid-north.
As Peter and Vera drove towards their unexplained cloud, they were becoming mesmerised by its threatening beauty.
We remembered making an observation about it, thinking, wow, that looked quite impressive, and it's in our direction. We might get a storm this afternoon. It is an unfamiliar sight to see something of that enormity coming towards you. It was the whole horizon by this time. It was our complete field of vision. The final stages of approach to this cloud, as we then thought, was one final photograph moment when we stopped and Vera got out of the car and she walked across the road to take a picture.
When I got out of the car to take pictures, I still thought it was a cloud I was taking pictures of, a weather front. It was just an amazing colour. I was just more thinking about, you know, we're going to love this at home, all these amazing pictures of this weather.
That was the first time in the whole episode that I started to become apprehensive. We could start to see colours, colour formations in this cloud, and he was still absolutely convinced it was a thunderstorm, it was a rain cloud.
Bushfires can create their own localised weather. Temperatures rise very quickly. The wind speed can pick up. Small areas of low pressure. But not only that, on the horizon you can see these billowing black clouds. They're called Pyrocumulonimbus clouds and could be mistaken for just a leaden cloud ready to rain. But how wrong you could be.
What's happening at the moment at Pinery?
It was very confusing for people driving into this region. These smoke clouds looked like normal weather clouds, so people didn't realise they were driving into danger and catastrophe.
But the winds are still expected to stay quite fresh to strong for a few hours more.
Then the enormity of what was in front of us started to become apparent. Vera came back from taking the picture and she sat in the car, and I remember saying to her that this possibly is something a little bit dangerous. Maybe we should think about turning around and going back to a town.
The unusual and attractive cloud suddenly felt much more ominous to Peter and Vera. They started to realise that it wasn't a storm cloud, but a pyrocumulonimbus cloud, a cloud full of ash, debris and heat from the raging bushfire only a mile ahead.
Fuck, it's coming this way. Holy shit. Fuck, look how quick it's moving. Fuck, I've got to turn this truck around. See you, boys.
Huge, devastating weather events from around the world are causing chaos. A large number of scientists now believe the cause is due to global warming. In Pakistan, the Indus River flows down from the Himalayas towards Karachi in the south of the country. It's a vast river which runs through the landscape like an arterial vein, offering lifeblood, supporting agriculture and helping to feed a population.
The monsoon arrived late that year across Pakistan, but when it arrived, the rainfall amounts were unprecedented. Some parts of the Sindh province disappeared under 10 times the amount of rainfall expected. Prior to the monsoon, the heat really builds across India, Pakistan and the Indian subcontinent. Temperatures can reach in excess of 40 to 50 degrees Celsius. So the natural process of the monsoon as the rains push northwards during the season is vital and life-giving. However, sometimes there's too much rain and it becomes life-threatening.
So in Pakistan, you had it worse because it was about a year of dry weather, and then it got a ton of rain over about 4 weeks. And after a year of dry weather, the soil just cannot handle that amount of water in such a short time. It can only absorb so much.
The southwest monsoon season in Pakistan normally runs through July to the end of September. In 2010, the rains arrived, but they were much heavier than usual.
We expect the rains to hit Pakistan around July time, but during July, the Sindh province was in deficit by around 70%. It was very, very dry, and people were concerned the drought would continue. However, during the following months of August and September, the rainfall amounts exceeded 248% across this region. So let me put that in perspective. Normally during a monsoon season, the Sindh province will get around 120, 130 millimetres of rain, and that's enough to sustain agriculture during the next season. But during this season, rainfall amounts exceeded 400 millimetres. The monsoon rains are not evenly distributed. They start off as showers. There may be a little bit of a dry spell, then more rain surges in. Now, for the southeast of Pakistan, they don't see as much rain as, say, the further north, places such as the Punjab. But during this year, the tilt of these lows, these monsoon lows, was slightly further southwest. So the southeast of Pakistan was in the firing line for a lot more rain. Not only that, an area of high pressure built towards the west, across Iran, across the western side of Pakistan. So once the rain kicked in, it wasn't going to go anywhere because it was blocked towards the west. And as the rain persists and you get a feed of very warm and moist air coming in from the Arabian Sea, these systems are fed and the fuel continues and the rain continues. The rainfall intensity peaked during the 13th of September, but over that 4-week period, these people saw 46 billion cubic metres of water.
The flooding hit most areas along the course of the Indus River. Over the years, the traditional floodplains had been built on, and many villages and towns were directly in the path of the flood waters. 14 million people were affected.
The Sindh province is nicknamed the breadbasket of Pakistan. It's a fertile land where a lot of crops grow, and all these crops were completely damaged.
According to sources, some 15,000 acres of land having the rice crops and paddies and the tomato crop has been washed away.
The flooding lasted nearly 2 months, with 1/5 of the whole country being overwhelmed. The United Nations viewed it as one of the worst humanitarian disasters in recent history. Australia has had to endure some of the biggest bushfires ever experienced, and also ones to be respected. As tourists Peter and Vera carried on their road trip, they began to realise that what they thought was a giant rain cloud was actually much more dangerous, and they were driving straight towards the flames.
There was an air of apprehension, and we then moved on about another mile down the road, and that's when we came to the forefront. We came within yards of this cloud. So we pulled up behind this lorry, and I could see the red lights of the lorry sort of in a dark, mysterious, sort of being swallowed into this fog.
I am actually quite frightened.
That was the first time we realised that this wasn't a rain cloud or a thunder cloud. It was actually smoke. We smelt smoke.
Bushfires tend to move as a front, edging ever forward. And the reason why they spread unevenly is when the wind picks up the embers from the fire, they can be tossed and distributed across the debris which hasn't yet been burnt. So these fires can edge forward, but they can actually spread out radially. Then all it takes is a change in wind direction and the inferno can spread elsewhere.
Wind's changed. It's on the roadside and stopped there, that's good. Here's the embers.
As the fire continues, volatile gases from the wood, which are being burnt as well, acts as a secondary fuel source. and these gases continue to allow this inferno to rage on.
Okay, fuck's sake, hope the water works. Here she comes, right at the front gate.
And these lights came towards us, and the guy in that truck, he stopped next to us and he wound his window down.
Yeah. Turn around, mate. Get this way. Flames here now. There's flames. Yeah. Thank you.
And that was the first time we heard the words fire, and it was the first time we felt the sense of panic as well, proper panic. We knew at that point that we were in a dangerous situation.
I can't see a fucking thing. I feel that wind.
When we were told to turn around, we still thought that we were on the edge of this fire. As soon as we turned around, suddenly it turned out that the whole fire had caught up around us. We could actually smell the smoke, and you could see a bit of ash in the, there was ash that suddenly came into the car.
Emergency warning for a bushfire burning under catastrophic conditions. There is a risk to life and property. People are in danger.
We thought we were going to die. I mean, we heard those words. This was serious stuff. We were in real trouble at that point. We were doing probably about 60, 65 miles an hour. And then the true horror hit. Day, brilliant sunshine, went to complete darkness. A darkness that was like closing your eyes. It was like a cave. The temperature rose enormously. But as we hit this darkness, which later transpired, we learned it was the smoke, which was the flames in itself, the flames just shortly behind it.
Smoke inhalation is a serious cause of death in bushfires. Bushfire smoke is a mixture of water vapour, small particles and gases, which may include carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide and nitrogen oxides.
So as that bushfire is spreading, usually by wind-driven elements or a boundary that's moving through the area, a cold front, a dry line, anything that can move air through, that will drive the fire and change the way that it is moving, which is why bushfires can be so dangerous.
Don't worry, we're in serious trouble here.
It was an oven in the car. Then we saw black particles coming through the air conditioning system and through the vents. We started to cover. We were actually brushing off black ash particles and red hot embers.
The car's spluttering. It is, with the fucking air. The ash has got into the air.
The car was starting to choke, and we then saw the embers come across the road. We actually drove through the embers. You could hear the clicking and cracking sound as the embers hit the side of the car and went under the tyres.
Jesus Christ.
I really thought that I was going to die. I realised that we were going into a deeper and deeper and deeper darkness.
Fire, you can see it there.
What, fire?
Fire's there, yeah.
Fucking hell, we're in the middle of a bushfire.
The Pinery Bushfire was raging over 82,000 hectares. Peter and Vera were running for their lives.
We were travelling at 50 or 60 miles an hour, and you could see that we were not going to outrun it. It was keeping up with us. It was chasing us. At some point, we were either going to suffocate or burn to death. No sooner we were in it, we were out of it again. We were in this brilliant sunshine again, and it was the weirdest thing. And we looked behind us, and we could see the edging of the smoke there, and we could see the flames at that point. They were close. The experience I had was a life-changing experience. But the most interesting, or probably the most fascinating that I find, is those decisions, those life-changing decisions. Should we have gone on? Should we have turned around? Should we take the left fork? Should we take the right fork? All very deep and meaningful in life, because they're all decisions we make every day.
Peter and Vera were caught up in one of the biggest bushfires in South Australian history. 2 people died. It destroyed over 360 properties and killed 70,000 livestock. They were lucky to escape. Lightning strikes kill about 24,000 people a year, and although these strikes are rare in the United Kingdom, Campbell Gillespie still thinks he's one of the luckiest people alive.
I was actually given the last rites. My parents were asked about donating my organs. I was that far gone on the Sunday night.
25 years of driving ambulances, I've never ever come across anything as severe as that.
So there's different types of lightning. You can get cloud-to-cloud lightning, where the lightning strikes goes to another cloud. There's lightning within a cloud. And then the final one is cloud-to-ground lightning. And that's the one we're most concerned about.
Lightning, in and of itself, is an electrostatic discharge. That's a really fancy term for you're taking static or a charge of energy and transferring it and connecting it with a different area. Generally, you get this, the simplest way to explain it is when you're in the winter, maybe you've got your fuzzy socks on and you're rubbing them across the carpet, and then you go to touch a light switch and ooh, you feel that little shock. That's because you have, when you're moving across the carpet, you're creating and building up a charge. You're picking something up, almost like you're Velcro, and these charges are just sticking to you.
Don't touch anything, man. No. Dude, you can.
This one.
Dude, don't go outside.
No, I'm not.
Holy shit! Oh my god! Oh my god!
The fucking
Holy shit!
Filter!
Lightning only comes from one type of cloud in the sky. It's a cumulonimbus cloud. And what that means, cumulo means heap, and nimbus means rain-bearing. But these clouds are far more than rain-bearing clouds. They are huge, they are angry, and they're violent. Strong winds, hail, snow, heavy rain, updrafts, downdrafts, lightning and thunder.
I was the first lightning strike victim the hospital's ever had in the history of the hospital also, you know.
No one's ever come across it before. So we're a bit dubious whether he had been struck by lightning or he'd just been found.
You're going to have different temperatures in those clouds. At the base, it'll be raindrop temperatures, so maybe up above freezing. But at the tops of the clouds, you're going to be below freezing. So you'll have water that's frozen near the top of the cloud, but that's liquid near the bottom of the cloud. That matters because the top of the cloud, where it's frozen, it's called grapple. It's a fancy word for little ice pieces, and they're just going to be rubbing up against each other, and they're developing their own charge, kind of like whenever you're in your socks going across the carpet. So now you'll have the base of the cloud, that's one charge, the top of the cloud, that's a different charge, electrostatic charge, and then the ground beneath it, as the cloud is moving over that ground, is going to have inherently a different charge.
Yes! And as that current builds up, so there is a release, hence the lightning.
Campbell Gillespie was hit by a huge bolt of lightning whilst running in his local park.
I'll never believe it happened to me. Never believe it happened to me. But I've got to live with the consequences of it. I'm disabled now, but tell you what, I'm alive, and it's fantastic to be alive.
So most of the people that are struck by lightning and survive experience what's called a flash. It literally passes over the surface of their body and out, and it's because of the sweat and the water that's coming out of the surface level of your skin, it vaporizes. So that's why you see people with their shoes knocked off or their shirt ripping, because literally whatever moisture was on your skin has been superheated and evaporated very quickly, almost like a little mini explosion off and around your skin. But most people survive.
Lightning strikes are much more common than we would think. It is estimated that lightning will strike the surface of the Earth 44 times every second. Now that equates to around 1.3 billion strikes per year. That's a lot of lightning.
I was a very good athlete. I was a top runner, and training was an obsession to me. I was training twice a day, 6 days a week. I was as fit as the proverbial butcher's dog, 10.5 stone. You could see my ribs through my chest. I didn't have an ounce of weight on me. I had the tucked-in chin, the tucked-in cheeks. But as you can see, it's now changed slightly ever since my accident. And from what they tell me, it was 70 degrees, beautiful Sunday morning. It was just coming to the end of the run through Rimrose Valley Park in Liverpool.
Campbell's running obsession had taken him and his two friends, Norman and Ray, on a sunny Sunday morning run.
Now, if you can hear thunder, then you're within 16 kilometres or 10 miles from a thunderstorm, and you can, at that distance, be struck by lightning.
There was a storm rumbling in the distance, but not close enough to worry them, or so they thought.
5 minutes out of the park, Norman hears a rumble of thunder. So Norman, being Norman, counts it. And he counts to get the flash, he knows it's far away, and he counted 10, so 10 miles, we'll just get back to the gym in time. And then instant storm, rain in 10 seconds, and then bang.
Campbell had been struck by roughly 1 billion volts, an unlucky 1 in 300,000 chance. Hurricanes are some of the most intense and destructive weather patterns which nature can throw our way. And Hurricane Patricia was one of the worst storms to ever hit Mexico.
All of a sudden, this wall of wind and rain just swept in. It was like being inside a washing machine.
Hurricane Patricia was the most intense hurricane to affect the Western Hemisphere. But in terms of cyclones across the planet, it came second to Typhoon Tip in 1979. So it was up there with the biggest beasts in terms of cyclones.
At the end of October 2015, Hurricane Patricia started off as a small, inconsequential tropical storm off the coast of Mexico, and no one thought it would amount to much.
Patricia was a bit of a surprise. It was a late season storm. It just kind of formed off the coast of Mexico, and the computer models, which usually tell you what's going to happen in the future, didn't really show anything beyond just an average hurricane.
Patricia was struggling at first with a couple of competing reasons for why it couldn't get really strong at first. It was moving over some cooler ocean waters, and that's the fuel. So if you cut off that warm ocean water fuel, it's really not going to be able to intensify as much as it could if it had that warmer ocean water. So as it was moving over the cooler waters, it had a hard time really getting its oomph, getting going.
Cyclone is the generic term for cyclones, hurricanes, and typhoons. It just depends where they develop. So hurricanes develop across the eastern side of the Pacific or the Atlantic, and cyclones develop across the southern hemisphere. Typhoons occur across the northern hemisphere, but across the western Pacific and the Indian Ocean.
A hurricane is a circulating storm that's completely independent of anything else. It doesn't require cold fronts, warm fronts, anything else. It just forms of its own volition. It is its own self-contained system. Generally, it forms from a disturbance, anything that can get convection, meaning thunderstorms, going. And they're generally disorganized at first in a tropical environment over the ocean. But as time goes on and the conditions are right, meaning little wind shear to rip it apart and warm ocean water for it to continue to feed off of, then these thunderstorms gradually become more well organized together, and they start to spin as one unit together in a cyclonic fashion, meaning it's around an area of low pressure.
Unbelievably tough chase. Not only is this storm incredibly dangerous, the strongest ever on this side of the Earth, maybe the strongest hurricane ever on Earth, it's also a very hard storm to chase.
The ocean is always a needed component for you to get a hurricane or a tropical system because it's the fuel for that system. Otherwise, you just have a regular complex of thunderstorms that you can get over land or over ocean. But the ocean is what's providing that tremendous amount of energy and moisture to turn it into a cyclone. So when you have little wind shear but warm ocean waters, you've got the right ingredients with that initial disturbance to create a hurricane.
To be a hurricane, a cyclone has to have winds of at least 74 miles an hour. A major hurricane, meaning a really strong one, has winds of at least 115 miles an hour. Patricia was incredible. It formed off the Mexican coast, and everyone just thought it was going to be a normal hurricane. And all of a sudden it strengthened like no other hurricane has ever strengthened, and it became the strongest tropical cyclone ever reliably observed on Earth.
It was even stronger than Super Typhoon Haiyan from 2 years earlier, which had wind speeds of 195 miles per hour, and Josh and his friend Eric placed themselves directly in Patricia's deadly path.
Literally, this nuclear bomb was right off the Mexican coast and threatening two major port cities, Manzanillo and Puerto Vallarta. As you can imagine, there was really serious concern about this as it wobbled toward the coast.
The biggest challenge with Hurricane Patricia was that the computer models that analyse and produce forecasts telling us where these storms are going to track completely failed. It could not cope with how quickly the centre of this low developed and intensified. We call it rapid intensification. Rapid intensification really happens when a system or a low pressure increases in wind speed by around 40 miles an hour over 24 hours. But with Patricia, the wind speed increased by 120 miles an hour. So these computer models could not cope with it and did not resolve it and create such a huge beast, which then lurked across the eastern Pacific and rampaged much of Mexico.
Out in the Pacific Ocean, Hurricane Patricia was gaining momentum.
When we look at hurricanes, we tend to look at where the track of the hurricane is going to be and how intense the winds are going to be. But in the case of Patricia, it failed on both parts.
When a hurricane or a cyclone approaches the coast, the eye, the center, will sometimes wobble a little. It doesn't move in a straight line. It's kind of like a drunken sailor. With Patricia, it was super wobbly. It just wobbled one way and another. And what made that really scary, it's like a crazy person just pointing a gun in all kinds of directions. And sometimes it was pointing at Manzanillo, and other times Puerto Vallarta. These are two major port cities, and at different times, that gun was pointing right at them.
Exactly where Hurricane Patricia would make landfall was proving very difficult to predict. Being struck by lightning is a 1 in 300,000 chance. But on the 10th of August 2003, Campbell Gillespie became that one.
I started on the shift on a brutal ambulance station about 7 o'clock on a Sunday morning. It'd been one of those long, hot weekends that really was stifling hot. We were sitting in the station, and then it darkened over. It went really dark, and my colleague said to me, "There's going to be a storm here," because we could see it coming in off the docks.
Norman heard a rumble of thunder, and if you hear the rumble, you then count 1, 2, and when you see the flash, and you see the flash in the distance, you know that's roughly when the storm's going to get to you. So he counted 10, so it was roughly 10 miles away, the storm was. And he just said to myself and Ray, so they tell me, because I know nothing of this, he said, we're just going to make it back to the gym in time. And then torrential rain in seconds, and then boom.
Campbell's body took the full force of roughly 1 billion volts of electricity.
Everything went white. Ray got blown in his face, Norman got blown in his bum. The ground shook, and then Norman looked up, and there I was, 15 feet in the air.
During a thunderstorm, each flash of cloud-to-ground lightning is a potential killer.
And then he remembers the sound of my face hitting the concrete. It was like a knife going through cabbage, that crack. And he went, oh, right. So it took them a couple of seconds to get themselves together. Within that 20, 30 seconds, I'd lost half my blood already.
We heard the lightning in the distance, and then the rain started, and then it was proper fork lightning right over the station, to be honest. And next minute, the phone went. The lady on the other end said, I've got a male, approximately around 40 years of age, that we think he's been struck by lightning in a park in Crosby.
It is surprisingly possible to survive a lightning strike. About 90% of people who are struck by lightning, which granted is rare, they survive. They generally have nervous system damage. It could be to their brain or to their skin that is happening after a lightning strike.
I landed plumb in the concrete in the middle. My face was destroyed. I'd swallowed my teeth into my lungs.
The lady said that the guy being struck by lightning, at first, we're a bit sceptical about it. It just threw us, to be honest, you know.
Mike Pye and the paramedic team rushed to treat Campbell.
First one we thought was cardiac arrest. We thought the guy was dead, to be honest, when we got there. He was blue. He didn't seem to be breathing. There was a river of blood coming from his mouth, his ears, his eyes, everywhere, going down the road.
Campbell had been blown high into the air by the force of the lightning. His massive injuries were caused when his body slammed onto the concrete.
The lightning went for me, I had metal on, I had the gold chain on, and the lightning went for the gold chain. It blew the crucifix off, but the chain is vaporised into my neck. And I carry it around with me to this day.
When we checked him over, the chain had gone, disintegrated, and there's a deep burn mark right the way around his neck. But the gold cross was stuck to his chest, and I actually picked it up and it's still hot.
Lightning, unbelievably, is 5 times hotter than the surface of the sun, coming in at a staggering 30,000 degrees Celsius. So you don't want to be anywhere near it.
I think the electrical bolt has hit the chain, and with him being soaking wet, it skimmed off his body and gone through his foot, and that's what's flipped him in the air.
People have been struck in their body have survived. The big one is to survive a strike to the head. That's almost unheard of. There's only 2 gentlemen in the world who've been struck in the head who are alive. You're talking to one of them.
Even though most people do survive lightning strikes, I cannot stress enough how important it is to not test your luck. It is important to get into a secure location. If you're outdoors, an easy find is inside an automobile, because that frame of the metal around you is going to act like a cage to disperse the energy around you, much in the same way that your skin would disperse the energy around you, except we want something else to do that instead of your skin. Do not go under trees. Trees are excellent targets for lightning, and if you're close to a tree, trees do not handle lightning as well as the human body does. They tend to have the sap and the water inside carry the current of the lightning, because bark is not like skin. So the lightning is going to travel through primarily the inside of the tree and it will explode. So you don't want to be near a tree as it's being struck by lightning.
It's not just the flash in the air that can be a potential killer. Lightning strikes the ground, and then lightning can actually travel underneath the ground and find you, and you're the earth, and come up that way. The threat of lightning continues much longer than people realise. Wait at least 30 minutes after the final clap, and then you should be out of danger.
My left leg's 4 inches bigger than my right. I'm going to lose my left leg soon because the blood's shutting down now, it's not circulating. But I look at the positives. My friends call me a combination of Flash Gordon, Lightning McQueen, Usain Bolt, the Scots one, but the best one is, if you're old enough to remember, is Captain Scarlet, Indestructible. But I'm the luckiest guy ever meeting the planet, and I'm always smiling, and it's great to be alive.
With Hurricane Patricia barreling toward Mexico, residents and tourists scrambled to escape from the monster storm. Josh and Eric were there to observe the Category 5 hurricane.
Hurricane Patricia was not a textbook hurricane on any level. First of all, how quickly it deepened and intensified over 24 hours. It intensified so rapidly, we'd never seen anything like this before. And so the forecasts were out and failed straight away. And it intensified so quickly that it went from a Category 1 hurricane, where sustained winds were around 75, 78 miles an hour, to a Category 5, where sustained winds were up to 207 miles an hour over 24 hours. And this is almost unheard of.
Hurricane Patricia holds the record as the strongest tropical cyclone ever observed on Earth in terms of the sustained wind speed. Now, it lost a little strength before it hit the coast, but it was still the strongest ever to hit the west coast of Mexico. This is a real record breaker, this one.
Josh and Eric were battling the storm in their hotel in the little town of Emiliano Zapata.
The whole building just started rumbling and shaking like we were in a subway car. And then there was a loud boom, and you could see all this debris flying away through the opening in the corridor. That was when the roof blew off, and we knew it. We could feel it. You could feel the whole building just starting to like rumble and come apart. The hurricane was making landfall at this point. The intense inner core was right over the town, and at this time the winds were estimated at about 150 miles an hour. So Patricia had weakened a little, but was still really powerful.
There's three factors which created such an intense hurricane. The rapid intensification, the fact that Patricia went from cooler waters to warm waters, which fuel hurricanes, but sea surface temperatures weren't around 28, 29, which is a trigger for hurricanes. We're up to 31 degrees Celsius. So again, that was another key factor which meant this was an unusual, a unique system, and was going to be a real potent beast as well. We had a very, very weak wind shear, which is what we need when we talk about hurricanes, because an increased wind shear, where wind changes with height, cools down the system too quickly. So hurricanes are heat-generating machines. Now, the heat comes from the sea, it comes from latent heat when rain falls, and what we want, localised, very small wind shear, so it continues to see the fuel rising and developing in the system.
Within 24 hours, Hurricane Patricia had gone from being a small tropical storm to a deep and incredibly powerful Category 5 hurricane.
All of a sudden there was a knock at the door, and they said that the family across the hall was in trouble. So Eric ran across to get them. Their whole room had been blown open. The roof, the ceiling, everything had blown away, and they were like huddled in a corner. So we pulled a family of a mom, a dad, and 2 little kids. So Eric pulled them into our room, and then there were 8 of us in our room. And then we heard one more big bang that sounded like the whole building was going to go, and all of us rushed into the bathroom, because the bathroom is often the safest part of a structure as it starts to blow away. We pulled a mattress off the bed and we wedged it into the ceiling in case the roof blew away.
The roof was going to come off. It did, I think.
When people talk about typhoons and hurricanes and cyclones, they sometimes confuse size and intensity. They're different things. Actually, some of the most powerful cyclones and hurricanes and typhoons in history were actually very small storms.
So how is the intensity of a storm measured?
So with any weather system, we measure in terms of millibars, and that is the force of the air acting on the earth. So with high pressure, there's more air in a parcel of air. And in low pressure, there's less air. And air likes to travel from high pressure to low pressure.
Pressure's dropping like a rock. We're down to 969 millibars, and we're getting waves of destructive gusts. I measured the air pressure in Patricia, and one thing that I noticed was how fast the air pressure changed, how fast it dropped, and then how fast it rose as the center of the hurricane moved away. And it really was an incredible indicator of how powerful the hurricane is, and also how small it was.
The surface pressure in the center of Hurricane Patricia wasn't 940, 930, not even 910. It was 886 millibars. That's intense, that's deep, that's record-breaking.
Josh and Eric were crammed into the hotel bathroom with the family, whilst the hotel seemed to be disintegrating around them.
It was really crazy, just 8 strangers crammed into a tiny bathroom together, just 8 human beings in fear.
Hurricane Patricia's energy was beginning to wane.
Still blowing hard. A lot of destruction. Hotel is badly damaged.
Josh, Eric, and the family were lucky to survive one of the most intense hurricanes ever to hit Mexico.
So after the hurricane passed and we crawled out of the hotel, the amazing thing was it had lost so much of its roof, and our room was one of the few rooms that still had the roof on it. This is the room of the family. of 4 that joined us during the storm. So we were just like really crazy lucky. We went into town the next day, and yeah, it was pretty smashed up. But this part of Mexico, they get hurricanes a lot, and it's not a wealthy part of Mexico. It's actually pretty poor, but the houses are built so solid. So there's a lot of damage. All the trees were gone, a lot of roofs blown off, but the houses pretty much stayed up, and they protected the occupants. I've been in a lot of hurricanes all over the world, and the 3 that made me fear for my life were Odile, Patricia, and Haiyan.
Remarkably, Hurricane Patricia only caused the deaths of 6 people. It was later reclassified as a Category 4 storm, which was ferocious yet missed the major populated areas of Mexico. Otherwise, the outcome could have been more tragic.